Welcome back to episode 121 of the Podcana podcast. This week we are going to be discussing everything DLC Bologna. It's finally here, the first DLC of competitive season 2. Moyen, how are you feeling? Are you excited? How was the CCQ last weekend that you attended?
Well, I had a great time at the CCQ. Was a little bit of a warm up, and I can't wait to get into properly into the DLCs for season 2 with Bologna coming up this weekend.
Very, very nice. Yeah, so we're going to jump straight into it, guys, because I know you guys are eager to just hear our thoughts. It's a couple of days before people are going to start playing the event. So let's jump over to a quick tier list that we've made. So here we have a tier list of all of the ink color combinations in kind of order of most playable / most popular. I think this is the predicted metagame that not just us, but a lot of people will expect if you're going to be attending DLC Bologna. So, Moyen, if you could quickly run us through the tiers. I know, we should be starting with the top, but I think the top will have a lot more discussion. So let's just breeze through from DCB why a lot of these kind of aren't seeing play. But we'll probably take it, I think, from B tier, and then A tier, and S tier is the most interesting, right?
Right. So C and D, while there's some stuff that bears some potential, I think, from our testing and experience, they haven't really been able to compare to maybe SA and B. Whereas
Even
I
your
think
Ruby Steel, even your beloved Ruby
yeah,
Steel is
well,
C tier.
it held up last week, or the week
Sure,
before.
sure.
And still, I mean, we could pull Green Steel down because
Yeah, we definitely
it's
could.
kind of almost on the same level of their potential. But okay, if you look at B, I think both Amber Emerald with dogs, or under this maybe Chromodogs, or Under the Sea with dogs, or maybe even some Circle of Life builds. I think all of them have their own merits and strengths and weaknesses. But I'm trying so hard to make them work, but I'm kind of struggling to get them up to the same level of maybe the top 4-ish decks.
Yep.
And Emerald is similar. I think you can for example, the LD list, you can kind of build it to beat aggro pretty well, and can be okay against most stuff. But I haven't really found a way where you can be okay against Blurple.
Sure.
Which is a big problem, because even though in this tier list there's Sapphire Amethyst, Sapphire Emerald, and Amber Steel on the same tier, I do still think, and from previous CCQs, it also seems like Blurple is the most played out of those. So I would be very, very, very wary of playing any deck that has a bad matchup into it, right?
Sure. No, I think that makes sense. Yeah, if you can't beat Blurple, then why are you playing the deck, right? It's like, even if it has good matchups into all of the other stuff, I think the only reason you'd want to take that specific deck is if you feel like Blurple is maybe more of at a minimum, and then the other ones are higher, right? So, but in my opinion, after the past weekend, we saw 2 Blurples win the 2 out of the 3 CCQs, and then we saw an Amethyst Steel win. So I think it just shows how consistent Blurple can be across the board. I think your deck really needs to be able to deal with this color combination, and if it can't, it's going to struggle. I don't think it's going to be a surprise if everybody walks into Bologna and the most played deck is Blurple. It would not surprise me in the least if that's the case. What about you?
Yeah. No, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Just when analyzing the tournaments of the previous weekend, I wouldn't even categorize them in the 3 CCQs. I would kind of look at the 2 CCQs that had around 300 players and value them the most. But also, and then the other 2 bigger tournaments were the Sweden CCQ, but also I think there was another tournament in America with similar amount of players. So I think both of those you should take into account. And the 8K was won by Amber Steel, to round things off.
Yeah, it was won by Sky. So yeah, let's actually just jump into some of these deck lists. Of course, I think it's more interesting to kind of get into the nitty gritty, talk about what these decks are good against, what these decks are bad against. So we will move on here to taking a look at starting off with Blurple. So this particular build is by Atlantis Ray. I believe they finished in the top 16 or top 8 within the CCQ in Cardiff. Top 16, yep. They played extremely well, and I remember I spoke to you a lot about this list, Moyen, and you kept pointing out that there's some cool things in this that you would be quite interested in trying, right? Most notably, They Never Come Back. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this card.
Yeah, I don't know. sometimes, or most of the time, I look at a deck list that's kind of like off the beaten record, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't really see how that would have a better matchup spread. But then I look at this, and it kind of seemed to make sense for the issues that the meta is having for Blurple, because the I think the high count of Monstro and Elsa is like the big one,
Mm.
where having um, a high density of like these huge cards in the mirror really helps you to top deck higher value cards, and once the board is somewhat stabilized. Then the Elsa, I think some games are like very, very difficult to win, or some games can only be won against Amber Steel if you have a way to deal with like two ready characters at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
which is very tricky to do without this 8 cost Elsa. So um, I found myself a couple times. So on my run in this ECQ, I think I dropped on 4-3, and a few rounds against Amber Steel, I was digging for that one of 8 cost Elsa. And if I find it, I win the game. If I
Mm-hmm.
don't, there was like nothing else that saves me.
Sure.
Um, so I guess like a little bit result oriented from that, but I think um, it's just this type of list could be better against both aggro, but also like the mirror, and
Mm-hmm.
then also against Emerald Sapphire, it has the three monsters, which is a huge factor on how well you would do into that matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess Elsa on its own wasn't as didn't impress me as much because it is still very, very clunky and inkable. But I was then really intrigued by this combination with that they never come back instead of hypnotic strength.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you'll use some utility um, by not being able to like on demand challenge for two more a couple of times. But I think this type of list, although it plays a lot of the same cards, might just enable you to play very differently to value your lore a little bit more, because at some point you have much more potential to like actually close out games with this 8 cost Elsa, and then maybe the following turns playing they never come back and quest again, and maybe you do that again. Um, but even like one Elsa into the turn after one, they never come back and quest a lot more than you otherwise would. I think you can really put on the pressure by trying to win the race with this deck. Um, I would probably play for Basil if I was to play this list. I
Mm-hmm.
think Basil is amazing in the mirror. But outside of this, like the rest is kind of what you'd expect to see maybe in a blood list. Um, so it doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, but I do think there's a lot of potential in this way of playing Blurple.
Is there a specific matchup that you'd like to maybe see Iago included in over some of these other forecasts? I mean, I know these, like the elephants really started to take over in a lot of lists, and it's like hard to fit in some of the other stuff like the Scrooge and the Iago. But just speaking upon those cards, is there any specific matchups you think it would be beneficial that players could consider including them in if they expect there's a lot of X color
hmm
combination?
Well, so against Amber Steel, it's usually not great. Against Emerald Sapphire, it can be okay, but like it's still swingy because there's like the heads held high, usually included 3 times, that
Yep.
can get rid of it.
Yep.
But it is a very good body, like if it does survive to maybe challenge back into a Clarabelle or something. Um, so I think the best situation for the Jaguars probably in the mirror on
Mm-hmm.
the draw, where if they then spend at least 2 ink, unless they play like Helping Hand in the list, which isn't very popular, on getting rid of your Iago, then they can develop another threat, and maybe you can hit them back with like an Elsa supported by a Basil or something. So that there is some like I think in the mirror there's the most situations where you can find a turn where even if they have the hypnotic strength, you kind of like it didn't hurt you as much because like you timed it in a way where it gave you a lot of tempo.
Yep.
But if it does stay on the board, it's like massive. Same, like even in the matchups where it's bad, sometimes you have to risk going for it, and it could it could be very bad. But like there's still those games where if it does stay a turn, that could be enough to like swing back the board very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like Genie, Dumbo are great. I think some amount of elephants will help you a lot. Um, at least on the play against Amber Steel, definitely help a lot against Amethyst Steel. But there's also a lot of interesting 4 drops that were in a lot of the top cut lists from the French CCQ. Um, so maybe we look at
Yep.
those lists next, because those are also very interesting to me.
Yeah, we can move on to them now if you want to. So, um, I'll let you speak about it. There's a lot dive into here. And the first thing, since you're fitting in a lot of 4 drops, I can see is we're also even cutting a genie, going into 3 genies, right? That's quite interesting.
Yeah, a lot of these lists had like 3 genies. I even saw a list in French CCQ Top Cut that had 2 forecast genies, which is not something you'd expect. I guess drawing multiples of them can sometimes be a bit clunky,
Hmm.
and they don't play for board as well in the mirror because like it only deals 2 damage back when it gets like Basel Elsat or Genie Elsat or something
Hmm.
like that. And then maybe the Elsa's left on like if the Elsa has only 2 damage on it, it can still survive another 2 damage instance. So like sometimes the breakpoint of this 2 strength doesn't work out as nicely as maybe the breakpoint of 3 strength from like a Wider or a Dumbo. So the Wider is one of the cards I opted to include here. Um, I think that is like definitely a valid thought of thinking, okay, if I get Elsat, I kind of want to be able to like deal 2 damage and once and 3 damage once to like trade back into the Elsa. So like having more 3 strength evasives kind of helps you do that so that they can combine with Genie or Elsa to in total trade back, and
Hmm.
then you can play for the evasive control a little bit better. But still, I'm not like in love with cutting genies because even if it only deals 2 damage back when it gets changed into, I feel like it having drawn you a card is still quite massive. So I wouldn't go below 3, and I have a hard time going to 3, but I can understand why you would do it.
Hmm. Yeah. A few more
Um,
different things to talk about in this list as well, like
yeah.
the digs, dig a little deeper. I talked about this card a little bit before, where I like the idea of it where you could use 2 4 costs to sing it, but even just Monstro alone can sing it as well.
Hmm.
Elsa can sing it, so it seems like it's pretty interesting for you to just find the few pieces that you need. Like I don't know, like you're in a certain match and you need to find the Elsa, or you need to find the Hades. How do you like it in comparison to um second star to the right? Have you tested it much yourself, or could you see yourself maybe being interested in giving this a try at least?
Yeah, no, I've tested it some, and like it gets the most value from people just not expecting it, right?
Mm.
Um, everyone's so worried about denying Singer 10, um, that they are often fine with you being able to sing for 8 or 9 because most decks play second star and don't play dig.
Mhm.
Um, so maybe you get like that enables you to sing it much more efficiently than the second star,
Mhm.
outside of it also just being cheaper to sing.
Mhm.
But it also does quite a bit less. I think like it nets you some advantage, but like it doesn't quite have the same swing as singing second star does. I think it does get better with the Monstro, with Monstro being able to sing it on its own, even if that doesn't generate like card advantage. If let's say you sing dig, take 2 cards, use one of those to re-ready him. Now you have like another card in hand instead of dig, but you looked at a lot of cards and maybe you discard one from your hand and now you took 2 out of 7 cards that like are really, really good for the situation. So there's still like some filtering that this dig plus Monstro can enable you to do very efficiently.
Mhm. And
Um,
for can you explain your thoughts on this Kita as to why you think it's being included? Because it's not like it's
yeah.
notable to say it's not as good as what Tala used to be, right? Because Tala was basically you
Hmm.
look at the top, you get it, and it's definitely not how far it'll go, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how
Yeah.
do you? I guess how do you feel about just being a 3/3 body? Because I don't know how much. I mean, yeah, I guess also like how important is the ward? Because to me, it's just like oh, you get the effect of this off once. Is that
Hmm.
good enough? Maybe.
Um, yeah, the Kita is very tricky. I don't think it's trying to be either
Hmm.
Tala or Hau'Fargo. It's kind of just trying to be an inkable forecast that helps you stabilize a little bit better on the draw, not get blown out as much by the the Elsas of this meta or the strength of a raging fires of this meta, I think. So like
Hmm.
I think maybe sometimes on the draw you're just happy to have a 4 drop where you know you will still have it next turn, which that might be what's necessary. Maybe you don't even always use it to like use the effect, but you're like happy to against Amber Steel, you're happy to have something that challenges on the board, and maybe you play Bell. Or like you know that if they are next turn they're like exerting a Tiana,
Hmm.
and maybe that exerting, if you were playing any other 4-drop, could be like a strength of a Raging Fire that gets rid of your 4-drop. But like now you have a ward 4-drop, which means you can go like you can always go sing into the unknown and then maybe play an Elsa and challenge with that. So it protects you of like the super blowouts a little bit. Of course, it doesn't challenge as well as you maybe would like it to with just 3 strength. It doesn't like take out a Tiana or a Daisy on its own. But often you can also maybe like use a Royal Guard or something to challenge one of their Auroras earlier. And if they challenge back into that Royal Guard you left on the board, maybe together with that you can deal the 4 damage. But and if you do have time to maybe trigger the effect, I do think it works in this deck a little bit more efficiently than in most other decks, right? There's also, I think, the Emerald Sapphire deck that we'll look at later that plays Kita. But in those decks, I mean, okay, so you play Kita on 4 ink, you use the you activate the effect on 5 ink, and then the turn after, instead of being on 6 ink, you'll be on 7 ink.
Yeah.
Which I guess that can also fit the Emerald Sapphire curve very well. But for this one, what I like is this deck also has like a very good 5 ink play usually. But one dynamic that we're seeing in how the deck building is changing in Blurple is people are playing less and less of like the 6-drop. I think even TikTok, it's still the most played 6 cost in Blurple, but like I think even that's being played less and less, and we see more and more lists that play like 0 6-drops.
Your classic
like skipping
ink token, right? I don't know. I was joking with Moyen.
Yeah.
I was playing with him a little bit on and off after the CCQ, and I was like, hey, there's one of 6 cost Robin Hood 4/4 within Sapphire. Every time I'd ink, because he gave me his deck and I was testing against him, I was like, oh, I found my ink token because I never played the card. We played so many games, I never played the card.
That's fair, but at the same time, we did play against like a Clarabelle deck where that doesn't come into effect as much. But yeah, no, I think all of the 6-drops are a little bit underwhelming, and if you can spend your ink efficiently without playing 6-drops, that's generally where you want to be. So Kita can maybe skip that 6. And it's not about playing Hades early. I think it's much more about having to ink less good cards from your hand and maybe enabling a double 4 or a 4 cost plus 5 cost a little bit earlier than it is about like really rushing towards that Hades. But I think there's still value in that if you do have the time for that.
Yeah, so would you say this deck is very much built for the mirror?
Would I say this deck's very much built
Well,
for
with
the
the
mirror?
Iago and with the Rider, again, that seems like it's quite good against the Dumbo. I feel like even, well, I'm not saying that this is specifically for the mirror, but like the one-off magical maneuvers, this is you bounce something back to your hand and you exert something, right? So I guess we've kind of seen, I mean, we've seen it in some of the games within the card of CCQ, the value of what Madam Mim Elephant does once you get to the high enough inks where you can like bounce a Hades, bounce an Elsa, bounce a Bell. Like a lot of the cards in Blurple have pretty good on-play effects, right? So it seems like quite an interesting inclusion potentially. It's another way to exert stuff, which in the mirror can sometimes make a good difference.
Yeah, I think this. Okay, so I think in total, this deck list will be fine in the mirror. I'm not sure it's like breaks the mirror or anything.
Okay, sure.
But I think it will still be a well-rounded list that like it tries to tackle the on-the-draw problems of these matchups without spending uninkable slots on it. I think that's kind of how I would go about it, because I think a lot of other lists, they try to play Scrooge, right? They're very happy to play Scrooge on the draw because Raging Fire doesn't always deal, or like it's hard for Raging Fire to really deal 5. And it also you can Elsa it, but like it's really hard to trade into it. So this deck's trying to do a similar thing, but without spending uninkable slots on it, so that it can still play like the top end that it wants to play Elsa for Hades, some of the songs. It has what I think that's also a different thing, but a lot of these lists have been playing a 1 jump to like slightly higher the consistency. I'm not sure I'd go there. Like I love consistency, but also I'm not sure like this slight bit of consistency is necessarily worth 1 more uninkable in the deck.
Yeah.
The magical maneuvers, I think that's kind of like an anti-aggro card. I think it can be nice to like just bounce a Hades, replay it, exert something, challenge into it. That's fine, but I would think its main use case would be like against an aggro deck. where you really need to deal with their top deck ready characters, and you just like magical maneuvers. Let's say your 5-cost Elsa exert
Yep.
something, and you know next turn whatever they play, you can Elsa that as well. It's like kind of one card that lets you deal with 2 ready characters, just like over the spread of 2 turns.
Before we move on to talking about Emerald Sapphire, as we finish talking about each of these decks, I think it would be good to give like just a brief summary, if that's okay. People are they're looking at all of these decks, all these different cards. Brief summary of why should somebody bring Blurple? Like, what's it good against? What's it bad against? Like a final thing.
Right. It's probably the best deck. It's converted very, very well. But it's also the most played deck. I think if you're going to play it, you have to expect and be prepared to play a good amount of mirrors as well. Which, if you feel comfortable with that, fine. But don't go playing Blurple if you know, then like, oh, I don't know how to play the mirror. And I think that's probably a bad idea. But I think now these versions are like also okay against Emerald Sapphire. It's pretty good against Amethyst Steel. And Amber Steel can be a bit of a problem if you lose the die roll specifically.
Specifically. It's true.
Yeah, like I mean, I think in total it is a bit unfavored against Amber. I think it's harder for Blurple to win on the draw than it is for Amber Steel to win on the draw in this specific matchup. But both decks are pretty comfortable going first generally. But yeah, Amber Steel would probably be its biggest weakness. Outside of these top 4 decks, maybe an even bigger weakness would be the Quamadogs.
Yeah.
I think it really can really struggle against that. Just Quamadogs is kind of like a little bit of a less played deck that's also maybe struggling in some of the other matchups.
Cool, makes sense. All right, let's move on to talking about Emerald Sapphire. So this is a top 8 deck from the French CCQ, and having a look at it, looks to be doing very green-blue things, but it has a very interesting 4-drop. Another one of these Kitas. What do you make of this card? I think the ward now for this card, I mean, if the ward it makes sense here, because I was also playing around with a 4-cost ward. Granted, it wasn't the same as this, right? But I still found value in the card having ward. It stops Strength, stops Elsa. As the game gets later, it stops Hades. In the mirror match specifically of this, it stops like MKB. It stops your Welcome. So
yeah,
you know, it seems from that regard at least it seems okay. But similar to how you said it gets to kind of the 7, we do see some Hades in here. I think it's also just important to get a decent amount of ink relatively fast in both Blurple and in Emerald Sapphire, right?
Yeah, no, that's probably something we should have mentioned for the Blurple Kita as well, where it's like, especially against Emerald Sapphire, even if you ramp into your 4-drop, if you were, let's say, on the draw, they might already shift Clarabelle, sing your welcome.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter doesn't matter too much what 4-drop you played, it's gone. You have a lot of cards, they draw a lot of cards. You're very sad. So I think that's where the Kita comes in perfectly as well. Just to like play a 4-drop where you know they can't target your 4-drop with your welcome. Outside of that, yeah, it does enable you to maybe go to these higher ink counts a little bit better, set up some like it doesn't set up the early shift, for example, like the uninkable bell that you were playing does. Because they can just like they can still remove whatever else you have on the board.
Yep.
It's just the Kita that will stick around. But that might be enough to maybe sometimes make it awkward for them to like deny you being able to sing like your welcome, or maybe even to sing together songs together with other cards.
I like how low this deck is on Uninks. It's like very low. I think it's 8, right? This seems pretty good. And like the Stop Chaos in its tracks, I played around this a little bit when I originally tested Emerald Sapphire, because I know you suggested to me and said, could I give it a shot? Works really well with Clarabelle, can help out against some of those matchups where I know a lot of people say, Purple Steel is a little bit tricky against this deck specifically because they have so many 3-strength characters. If I don't have the heads held high under the sea, it can be quite tricky. So Stopped in Chaos, I know it felt like a good card at some times, and then it didn't feel that good. But luckily, it's inkable, so you just ink it, and it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, I still really like it. I would probably play at least one. I think I would be between 1 and 2 for this one. I think it really improves the Amethyst Steel matchup that can otherwise be tricky with all of the 3 strength characters. Maybe I'd still like some Mother Knows Best, but I mean, it is definitely crazy that this deck managed to stay on 8
Yeah,
uninkables
it's
while
crazy.
still playing 2 Baymax and 4 Under the Sea, which is usually like some extra uninks, right?
For sure. Yeah. Not too much more to say about Emerald Sapphire. I think we talked about it a lot. I mean, the one notable thing to say, I guess, is across all of these like weekends leading up to the DLC, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe an Emerald Sapphire has actually won an event. Like they keep doing pretty well, getting up there, but I don't think we've seen one take an event yet.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's doing all right. I think it's still like it fascinates me that it's still like not really set in stone how you build it, right? Okay, that's like okay, if you want to play Baymax, you maybe support it with a few Bobby, then you maybe play a few Plickly. If you don't, maybe play a few Scooch. There's like these ideas that are cohesive. But I think, for example, over the last weekend, we had this list that suddenly appeared with 4 Kida, which is amazing. We had, I think Alphors made top cut in the Cardiff CCQ. He wasn't playing headset high, just like a very high density on big characters that work without relying on like being combined with other cards. That
Yep.
was really interesting. Then we had some Basel shift versions that did well. For example, Ryan, who
Yep.
came over from America, was playing that. So there's still like so much variety in that color combination, which I think is really cool.
I agree. All right, so before we move on to Amber Steel, brief summary again with this. A lot of people say this does well into Blurple. For my testing, that's true, but I think also a lot of the games we saw in the CCQ, by no means, I mean, in my opinion, although I don't think it's heavily favored at all. We saw so many Blurple players that just kept putting up a fight, putting up a fight. Biggest thing with this is like, I don't know, green, blue, you need to hit the cards that you want to see, right? Of course, that's true in every deck, but specifically, like you really want your Clarabelle shift. Oh, actually, another thing. Sorry, just a note in this deck. I'm also noticing there's um
Not banned.
no bend, right? So nothing for kind of the mirror, which no bend I think is also fine. Again, it's like it's not like you have to put bends in the deck, but a lot of people just do put one of bend in the deck. So things are not set in stone,
Yeah.
right?
I think Bent got a little bit worse against Blurple. The better the Blurple players got at
Yes.
like playing the matchup and the
Yep.
more experience that they gained. Because
And
they
it's just
just like
awful in like a lot of the other matchups, in my opinion. It's kind of you play for
right.
Blurple and for the mirror match. It's like against Amber Steel, it giga breaks you, like
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because in like against Blurple it's okay, depending on how the game goes and how they play. Against Amethyst Steel and Amber Steel you don't want it. But the mirror, if your opponent plays 1 bend, you play 0, it's like it's quite tricky, even with just that 1 card difference. So it's kind of like the deck's somewhat keeping itself in check, maybe, because like maybe it would rather not play it, but then if you like every mirror is playing it and you're losing the mirror to it, that's a problem.
Yep. Yeah. So again, yeah, just a brief summary. I would say you should probably play this deck if you've put enough reps in it. If you feel quite comfortable against Blurple, I think it can do well. I don't want to say by any means it's like heavily favored, but I have had some games in testing where sometimes you can't just kind of lock the Blurple player out of the game. You just do your thing and you win. Has some game against Amber Steel. Definitely depends on how you build it, and a lot of people say they struggle with this deck sometimes against some Amethyst Steel. I think it depends on the version of the Amethyst Steel that's being played, but also just the player in general. I think, I don't know, I've played against some Amethyst Steels that I feel fine against, but then as soon as I started playing against better players, it was quite difficult. So yeah, we'll move on to talking about Amber Steel now, which I think we'll also see a massive amount of representation at DLC Bologna. I think this will be the deck that people want to be probably playing to try and beat Blurple. Gotta, of course, give another shout out to Sky taking down yet another event with. I first looked at the deck. I was like, oh my god, did this guy literally run it back with the exact same 60? He was like, no, he did make some changes. But I believe the changes are it's mainly just this Lilo. What did you manage to speak to Sky? I haven't spoken to him since we last had him on the pod about his reasoning for the inclusion of this card.
No, I haven't. I guess the deck does run out of cards very
Yes.
easily. So even if Lilo playing an exerted Lilo isn't always like the greatest play, if it like buys you a little bit of extra time or maybe makes it so that 1 extra character sticks, that's already more than enough. And like for a 2-cost 2 quest that doesn't need much higher upside than that, I think, to
Yep.
be worthwhile.
Yep.
playing in the deck. I'm definitely a little bit surprised to see the Penny drop to 3. I think Penny, I can see the value that Lilo could have. I think Penny is incredible. And there's so many times where Penny's like this 2-quester that also made sure an extra character stuck around for a turn.
Yep.
Like made a trade awkward. Um, so that definitely surprises me. I think you could also argue. I would personally also argue for 4-Pete. I think it's good enough in some situations that I'm okay with it not being amazing in a lot of situations. Because like these some situations you just like win if you have a Pete against specifically Emerald Sapphire, but also against other decks that can really help you Tiana lockout. But you know, this is an amazing run of performances by Sky.
Indeed. Yeah, he's absolutely crushing it. And unfortunately, I don't think he's coming to DLC Bologna. But if he did, I'd love to see how far you could take it with this deck. You know, I guess we got to wait till Milwaukee to see if he can. I mean, he doesn't. Not that he needs it. He likes I'm sure he'd like the prizing, you know, but he does already have his qualifications. So, yeah, again, for the summary for this deck, I would say play some Amber Steel if you expect a heavy Blurple room. Definitely test the matchup as much as you can. You also have to test the other matchups. You have to, like, the biggest reason why Pete is included in these decks is it really, really, really helps out against Emerald Sapphire specifically, but it is also an important card in against if you're against any other Steel matchups to stop Strength, if you're against Blurple to stop Into the Unknown, stuff like that. So, you know, a deck like this, people think, oh, it's easy, I'll just pick it up and run with it. Like, you got to put the reps in with this deck. Also, still, of course, has decent amount of uninkables, so you just have to know what opening lines you want to take against certain decks as well. I think it's very easy for people to just pick this deck up and say, oh, I'll just do whatever. It's like, you should try and realize, okay, this opener should be better against this deck, this opener should be better against this deck, and not just say, oh, I'll just go for my 1, 2, 3, you know, type of stuff.
Yeah, like you can kind of very early plan through a lot of your turns.
Yes.
And if you can't evaluate properly which one of these lines is going to lead to a better game state more often than not, then you'll ink the wrong card and suddenly you'll hurt your chances of winning very, very quickly. Still, I do think the deck provides a high floor, right? I think even if you don't do all of these things properly, I think you'd still have a very, very powerful deck. But just like to get the most out of it, it requires a lot of skill.
Definitely, yeah. Okay. Moving on to the last deck that we want to kind of dive into from the top 4, it is an Amethyst Steel build. This is Luke Smith's specific build from the Carta CCQ, who came in 2nd place. And you spoke to Luke a lot, Moyen, during the interview stage, right? We joked afterwards that, I mean, you know, the stream went to Be Right Back stream. I think myself and Baker were like, you guys are just doing a masterclass of, like, coaching on the stream for free, right? You guys were talking for ages about this deck. So, honestly, like, I was still really impressed with how deep he went into the tournament, how far he did. Obviously Luke's a very good player. He was qualified for the European Championship. But in a massive field full of Blurple, I think to make it that far with this deck is very impressive, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, also had a very good record in that specific tournament against Blurple. So he doesn't feel like the matchup is really as bad. And then that you still have these curves where also Blurple can very much struggle into that if you just go like 1, 2, 3, 4 plus Strength of Raging Fire. The way this deck is built specifically is also like to be very good in the mirror, just to like go a little bit taller than most Purple Steel builds, as this is opting to run the full 4 count of Bell, which I think is a great decision. And in the games that we had been casting, it was also like there was so many spots where Bell would have done wonders for him.
Oh yeah.
And most lists would have only played 1 or 2 maybe, and then he kind of just didn't manage to draw them, although he was playing 4. But like you could really see the value that they would have had in all of these situations. So it's playing like the full 4 count of Dolores Madrigal as well, which enable you to go much, like to compete with these late game decks much longer and put up threat after threat after threat for a while.
For sure, yeah. I was even thinking about the I wonder what Dolores would look like in Blurple, but then you kind of realize if you're ramping into a card like Dolores, I mean, it depends against what it depends what you're playing against. It's like how likely are they going to have something that's exerted, but like
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting to think about, right? Because it's like, well, they're kind of cutting genies because it seems like a little bit clunky. But if you're playing Keto, which is just a 3/3 that has like a decent effect, that's kind of ramping you, but like Dolores
Mm-hmm.
Madrigal basically just replaces herself, has a decent body. It's I mean, how do you feel about the condition on this card? That how like how often does this condition have to be met? How often can your opponent play around Dolores Madrigal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess, especially specifically in open decklist, you'd kind of be a little bit more scared of like, oh, if they see I play for Dolores, can they maybe make it a little bit more awkward for me to get that draw off?
Mm-hmm.
But I think in most games, still the way the game states and board states work is like you can kind of quest in a way where they kind of have to take a challenge, even if it means maybe you get
Mm-hmm.
a draw off, or like you quested early, they challenge into something, you challenge back, and they really want to challenge back into your thing. Like you can kind of set it up in a way where if they don't give you that draw, maybe you gain some value because they like didn't exert their character. And if they do, you're also happy. In Blurple, it would be interesting because like the interesting part is your opponent doesn't have to exert into your characters, right? You don't force them to do that,
Mm-hmm.
but your opponent's like inherently forced to quest
Mm-hmm.
because you are like the deck with the better late game. It's like
Mm-hmm.
if they were not to quest because you had some Dolores in your deck, I guess that would be fine. Um, but yeah, I think it would kind of go into the direction of, okay, I want even better grindy games, which I'm not sure Blurple needs as much. It kind of
Yeah.
like, it maybe needs some cards to not get blown out on the draw. It maybe needs like, and also doesn't help with evasives, which
Mm-hmm.
sometimes like then other evasives run away with the game with Dumbo. Um,
I don't
but
know.
it is still interesting. I don't think it would be that bad to play like Dolores and
Yeah,
Blurple.
maybe instead of the Kitas, try some Dolores. And, you still got the Riders if you want to play that version. I do think Rider seems quite interesting. I mean, do you think you could even play Rider in this build? Well, no, of course you don't have to. You play Genie, which is a cheaper Rider in Amethyst Steel, right?
Yeah, I mean, Ryder like cares more about like controlling the board. I think this deck you're very happy to just like have a smaller body or non-evasive body, but it quests for two.
Yep.
Um, so I don't think this deck wants Ryder. But yeah, for I guess there's so many good four-cost characters in Amethyst.
Yep.
I guess there's Genie, Dumbo,
Mm-hmm.
there's Dolores Madrigal, there's
Yep.
Treasure Guard,
Yep.
there's Mim Elephant, there's
Yep.
Ryder.
Yeah. There's so
Did
many.
I miss something? Yeah, there's like there's so many options for all of these Amethyst decks. I guess there's Panic. I don't think Panic's bad.
There's
Maybe not in Blue, but
oh
like in Amethyst.
what's that silly card I've never seen anybody play? Like the Earth Giant or something. It's like a 4 cost 4/5 quest for 2, but when you play it, your opponent draws a card.
Yeah, I know. Okay, that's not a good card. But there's another good card we forgot, which is Iago.
Oh
It's
yeah, of
also an
course.
Amethyst 4-drop.
Of course.
Um, so yeah, um there's a lot of good card quality in Amethyst. Sometimes Amethyst is a little bit spoiled for choice on what characters they want to be playing.
So yeah, that's all of the deck list that we're going to be discussing. We will stick around and chat a little bit about this past weekend, the CCQ. It was a great time. I was really, really happy with how the broadcast went. Nothing's perfect. We did have a few issues, I will admit. You know, but I think I sometimes I hold myself to a high standard. I knew we were going to be streaming on the official Disney Lorcana Twitch channel, so I wanted things to go as well as they possibly could go, and for the most part, I think it was good. The viewer experience was positive. I hope you guys enjoyed the broadcast. I have to give a special shout out to, well, to everybody, of course, to the casters, to the judges, to Ben from Ravensburg, UK. Thank you for allowing me to produce the event, and thank you for inviting us all along to help cast and put on such a great show. A very special shout out to Moyen and also to Spessy for helping out with the production. I was a little bit scared I would be glued to a seat for 12 hours because I was basically a one-man producer, but everybody chipped in, everybody helped out. And I know you, Moyen, you particularly enjoyed doing the showing like the cards and stuff, right?
It was so fun. No, no, but I mean, I was incredibly impressed with
Oh, thank
how
you.
you were able to do all that, like basically on your own. You had brought all of the equipment yourself. Oh no, I brought one camera, but like basically all of the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did the production. You built software, you built the overlay. And I think even if there were like very small hiccups, I think in total was really, really impressive that you were able to put all of that on. And like the production was just fun because like to me, it almost seemed like a competition for myself, which is like how quickly can I put like display the card with the software that you had built for the stream, like that they were talking about, or
Before they play it, right?
maybe
Yeah.
maybe I can like predict their play and like have it ready, or maybe even show it before, or like a card that's cool to talk about. So like, I was really really happy doing that. Of course, um, I was super happy that you like or that like I was able to cast a few
Cast.
rounds as well.
Yep.
Um,
I mean, you cast the
and
final, right, with Kim.
right,
Yeah.
I didn't want to take. I mean, especially was supposed to cast the finals. I didn't want to take it away, but then like, we were just like filling in for a little bit, and then he allowed me to cast the finals, which was also super nice of him. Um, and yeah, I enjoyed like the more that I get to do it, I think the more I realize, okay, I think I might really really enjoy casting. Feedback's been pretty good too, well received. And yeah, so I was happy to do all that. I was also just again, I think with all of these events, I'm just happy to be there again and meet the community. I think it's always great. It's like kind of although now we had maybe okay, now we had content set jams, we had CCQ now, we have Bologna next week, we had like Malmö a month ago. So now we have a lot of events, but still I always think back on like this like long period where there was very little to do. Um, and I'm just happy we get to do all of these events again.
Yep, I agree 100%. It's been so great to just see the community again, see everybody coming together, like seeing like new like up and coming players as well, right? Like there were so many stories that were built from the first season of competitive Lorcana, and already it's like not even the first DLC, and there's people making names like, of course we all knew Sky within the community, but he's like really taking the competitive community by storm. Tiago as well, who like went back to back on big tournaments. Like these are names that this it's kind of like pre-season, right? And we're already like, oh, these could be big names, and already for me at least, I'm like, okay, I want to see how these players perform at like DLC sized events as well. Like
Mhm.
I think when it comes to competition and stuff, like, and having a narrative is so important, and you get to kind of like follow a player's journey along. Like if you're watching a tournament, I always like to root for somebody, right? Like, whether it be I don't know this player but I think they have a spicy deck, or I do know this player, I really respect them, I want them to go far. I think that's the joy of watching tournaments and stuff like that. And this spans from um of course, like I've watched this and had this in other card games. You've had this in other card games as well, Moyen. Like I spent a lot of the past few days speaking to you about like a lot of your experience in Hearthstone, and we kind of got a little bit nostalgic, right, of,
All
of,
right.
of what of what that was like. And I think it's quite interesting, right? Like you look back, and I'm sure so much of what you did back then has helped shape you into the player you are now, and I think has given you a lot of like advantages maybe over other players from how much experience you had playing a game like that, and also just being in those environments, right? Like being on camera, being on stream, playing in really tense games where if you win a lot of money, or you win a promo card that's worth a lot of money, that type of thing, right? So I think a lot of that has really stood to you. So yeah, would you say that really helped shape you think?
Yes, I mean, it definitely like you learn and improve from all of these experiences, like to get a better player. But I also think it's just like it just makes for great stories. And it was so fun to because like I hadn't thought about that for a while, and then suddenly we were like on the plane, got some seats next to each other that we like switched to, and we were like speaking about the old Hearthstone tournaments for 2 hours, and suddenly the flight was over.
The flight was
Um,
over, yeah.
yeah, so I think it does definitely also shape you as a person. And I wouldn't want to miss it.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all we have time for this week. I know it's a little bit short, but it's a busy week for both myself and Moyen. Between I'm gonna try help Moyen test a little bit for some stuff, and I also just need to pack and get ready because I feel like we're just back and then we're off again. It's constant traveling. But honestly, I really want to take the quick moment at the end of this episode to truly, truly thank everybody for all of your support, everything you've done for both myself and Moyen over these past 2 years nearly. Like, I remember back in the day saying, I really, really want to cast, and Brendan got the casting gig, and it's like this weekend, it's here. It's the opportunity has finally landed, and I owe it all to you guys and all of the viewers and all your support. So I'm truly, truly thankful. If you see myself or Moyen in Bologna, if I'm wandering the halls during one of my breaks, or if you catch Moyen before or after a game, we always say this, but please come up to us. Don't feel shy. Like we love interacting with players as much as possible. It's something that's really rare that we don't get to do so often. But now that there's more events, it really means the world to see you guys. So thank you so much for your support, and I'll pass it over to you, Moyen, before we close off. If you have any final words as well.
No, no, I can only repeat. I'm very happy with what we have going on here. Um, and the community is a big, big, big part of that.
100%. Well, that's it for this episode. If you guys enjoyed it, the number one thing you can do is leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your local podcast platform. There is a video version available over on youtube.com/@PodcanaPodcast. Hit the subscribe while you're there. Twitters are @Kawatek_CG and @Moyen_HS. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.